Just days after the election, Google's top executives, including co-founders Sergey Brin and Larry Page, delivered an incredible rant about how upset they were at Donald Trump's victory and how extreme his voters are. All this was recorded, and this week the video was leaked to Breitbart.
Most people here are pretty upset and pretty sad. Myself, as an immigrant and a refugee, I certainly find this election deeply offensive, and I know many of you do too. And I think it's a very stressful time, and it conflicts with many of our values.
Fear, I think, not just in the United States, but around the world, is what's fueling concerns, xenophobia, hatred, and a desire for answers that may or may not be there.
Joining us now from New York, Katherine Timpf, a National Review writer and Fox News contributor, and Cathy Areu, a political columnist for Bold Global and a former Washington Post magazine editor. Kat, what's amazing here is that the Google leaders are doing this all in front of video cameras. Like the video is rolling, and they assume that absolutely everybody agrees with them that Trump's election was a no-good, horrible, terrible, depressing event. There's even talk of helping employees move to Canada.
Yeah, absolutely. There was serious talk of helping employees leave the country. This was seriously some raw emotion. People were very, very upset in the video. And I understand the workplace being a place where you also have friends and you talk to your friends about issues that you're facing. And the election was an issue and a very emotional issue for a lot of people. I don't understand, though, why it was videotaped. That seems like an interesting choice, especially when you see the way that this videotape has been used in conservative media this week to kind of say, hey, look, Google is biased, and there might be something to the idea that their bias impacts the way they do business.
Well, we'll come back to that. But, Kathy, you know, they're entitled not to like the president, but they also went after Donald Trump's voters as dumb, extreme, having tendencies toward fascism or communism. Talking here about 63 million Americans.
Yeah, that's exactly what they did. And I think one of the executives cried on video. And this is part of their TGIF Friday meetings, I think they've had for about 20 years now. So it's interesting that a conservative media outlet put this out with a company, about a company that doesn't hide the fact that it is liberal. So a conservative outlet put out these statements from a liberal company, but it's now an era of buyer beware, reader beware. We really need to know who's telling us what. We need to be more educated as readers, as consumers, and know where we're getting our information from. So,
right. The only problem with that is that, you know, Google is not a website that you can believe or not believe. It's a service that almost everybody uses. Google put out a statement, let me jump ahead here, saying, well, look, this is a meeting where everyone's free to express their opinions, and our products are built for everyone. But, Kat, when Sergey Brin, we saw on the video, who says Trump's election is at odds with our values and he finds it deeply offensive, then we're asked to believe that this doesn't affect how they run the company at all. Your thoughts?
I think it's impossible to know because I don't work at Google and nobody really knows. But you know as humans that your biases do affect the way you do things, especially when you are this emotional about something. So that's why I think we've seen a lot of conservatives pick up on this. There was also, of course, this week that email that Fox News obtained showing that they were trying to turn out the Latino vote in the 2016 election, which Breitbart and other conservative sites also pointed as more evidence that Google was trying to help Hillary Clinton and that it's continuing to be biased in the way that it operates.
Right. Now, Kathy, President a week or so ago said that Google was rigged, used that word rigged against him and the right. I don't believe that executives tinker with every search or they even have the power to do that, although they have been accused of pushing some conservative voices down in the all-important rankings, and these algorithms are written by humans. So what should we think about whether or not there are obviously left-leaning political views, anti-Trump views, you know, taint the actual product?
Well, yeah, the algorithms are written by humans, and this proves these humans were not happy, and they were actually crying about the outcome, which Mitt Romney's campaign, many Mitt Romney supporters were crying 4 years prior to that. So this is something that does happen. It's not unusual. But, yeah, now we have to question the algorithms. We really do have to wonder, was the president right on this one? Because they are coming out. The executives did come out and say they were upset about this election, and what could they do to change this Trump era. So yeah, they're human. They're human. But at the end of the day, it's a company. So are they really going to tinker with the bottom line over this?
They're opinionated humans. And remember last year, a Google conservative Google engineer was fired over a memo titled Google's Ideological Echo Chamber. A quick question for you, Kat. A New York Times reporter saw this Google video months ago, thought it was no big deal, used a few of the more benign quotes in the anecdotal lead of a story about how Silicon Valley was warming to the president, didn't use the most explosive comments. That really surprised me.
That doesn't surprise me at all, because that doesn't fit the editorial narrative of the New York Times. The editorial narrative of the New York Times would definitely be that Google is completely unbiased, and they wouldn't want this to come to light, because it does make Google look biased, which it hasn't really been secretive about, but it provides pretty clear-cut evidence of it in this video.
All right, guys, let me get a break. Still to come, new criticism from former Trump confidants about that Bob Woodward book as he makes the TV rounds, and the thing seems to be a runaway bestseller. Stay with us. One million copies of Bob Woodward's book, Fear, are now in print, and as President Trump dismisses the book as fiction, the veteran reporter has been hitting the TV circuit.
It is mostly anonymous sources in here. Why should people trust you?
But the incidents are not anonymous. It gives a date, it gives a time, who participates.
What's striking is how a number of interviewers have tried to get Woodward to say that the president is, well, kind of crazy.
Any concern about Donald Trump's well-being mentally, or did they just believe that he's got a deficient personality that can't handle the truth?
Happily, I'm not a psychiatrist, and I don't dig into that.
I worry in particular about the emotionally overwrought part of it. Do you mean by that he is out of control?
No.
Kathy Timpf, are you struck as I am by how some of these anchors kept trying to get Woodward to say that Trump is unhinged, and Woodward wouldn't go there?
I'm a little shocked that he wouldn't go there. I'm not shocked by the question, because the same thing happens every time one of these books is released. The media reaction is always the same. It's the same as it was with Wolf's book. There's almost breathless coverage of it on the left, some sort of huge bombshell. And on the right, it's pretty much ignored, or saying, hey, look, this is all anonymous, this is all unsubstantiated. Yeah. So, of course, if they're seeing this as this bombshell, they're going to try to get that bombshell headline saying that, yes, indeed, the author of this book says that he's unhinged.
Right. Well, I'm not surprised, because Woodward has always been kind of taking this kind of just the facts approach, and he's not a TV soundbite bomb thrower. But Cathy Areu, Woodward telling The Guardian, I think too many people have lost their perspective and become emotionally unhinged about Trump. The media should respond with what really happened, in other words, as opposed to characterizations and name-calling.
Yeah, and Woodward is one of those old-school journalists. I mean, Nixon experienced that firsthand, and he's written about 7 presidents since. Mm-hmm. So yeah, Woodward, being from the Washington Post, I wrote for the Washington Post. You wrote for the Washington Post. So as Washington Post writers and reporters and editors, there's a strict guideline, and he's not going to come out and say unhinged. He's not going to use these words. He's going to stick to the facts. That's how we were trained. That's how we wrote. And this book just gives the facts. It puts it out there for the reader, and those who support Trump are not going to like it. Those who do not like Trump are going to love it, and there you have it.
Some of the facts in dispute, and it's not a Washington Post project, but on the Today Show, Savannah Guthrie pressed Woodward about some of the denials coming out. Take a look.
Yes. John Kelly now says, that never happened, I didn't say it. Jim Mattis, another person, quoted as saying the president's understanding is like a 5th or 6th grader. He comes out subsequently and says, I didn't say it. Are they lying?
They are not telling the truth.
And, Kat, this week, Gary Cohn, the former economic advisor, put out a statement saying this book does not accurately portray my experience in the White House. Rob Porter, the former staff secretary, often misleading portrait, but they didn't deny any of the specifics in the book.
Right, absolutely. But the fact that a lot of these sources are anonymous makes it kind of easy to issue these sorts of denials. And books like this, in general, I think, I don't understand the point of them, because just as Cathy said, they just reiterate what people already think. If you don't like
you
Trump,
don't understand the point of them. I mean, Woodward is spent many months going behind the scenes. You can accept or not accept his portrait, but you don't think there's any value in attempting a book-length portrait?
I understand the point of it, but I don't understand if he thinks he's going to change any minds here, because he's not going to change any minds. Anybody who thinks that Trump is not a great guy, looks at this as further evidence that Trump's not a great guy, that the White House is in complete chaos. And people that support Trump, they look at this and they say, oh, it's all anonymous. I don't believe it. This is just more of left-wing people trying to smear the president. And quite frankly, a lot of them might say, even if it were true, they wouldn't care because they like the results coming out of the White House.
Right. Well, you might be right about not changing minds in this polarized society, but on the other hand, it's generated an enormous amount of media coverage, and that may have an impact. So, Kathy, by attacking Bob Woodward, as the president has been doing, as a fiction writer, he's an idiot, he's a Democratic operative. You know, obviously this is a journalist who's been around since he and Carl Bernstein broke the Watergate scandal. Didn't Donald Trump give this book a tidal wave of publicity?
Right. But to question Woodward and to say these things about Woodward, he's criticized everyone, Rosie O'Donnell, I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger. So, but Woodward, he's one of the country's best journalists, investigative reporters. I have great sources within the White House and from the last 3 administrations. I can't imagine his sources. So I don't think I would question Woodward's sources. I'm a little jealous. I'm sure he could pick up the phone and talk to anyone in there. So
well, he also knocked on people. He also knocked on people's doors at night. Let me just say to close this out that you know, you can criticize Woodward's background reporting techniques. You can question the accuracy of the book. But now that I'm actually reading it, there is so much about what people thought and these long scenes and meetings, not always, you know, criticizing Donald Trump, that it's impossible not to believe that he spent a lot of time with Trump confidants and with Trump associates and former White House officials. Great discussion on both topics. Cathy Areu, Kat Timpf, thanks so much for joining us this Sunday.
Thank you.
That's it for this edition of Media Buzz. I'm Howard Kurtz. By the way, Andrew Cuomo, the Democratic primary for New York governor, was running against actress Cynthia Nixon. This got so much publicity, he trounced her by 30 points. It was a landslide. So why was there so much attention to something that was never going to be a competitive race? I would say, 1, it's New York, and 2, Sex and the City.